To the channel, guys. Whilst ongoing right now, Keir Starmer is under massive amounts of pressure with regard to the Chinese spy scandal, sort of cover-up or alleged cover-up. The MI5 have urgently warned that Chinese security threats, and even stating that they've had to deal with one over the last week. Yes, the head of the MI5 has came out saying the UK needs to defend itself robustly. We're going to be going into a bit of the video, of course, from his announcement, and of course a little bit more with regard to the questions that weren't given to the sort of media as such, but we're going to get a bit what questions were asked, because of course Keir Starmer and this Chinese spy scandal was a massive talking point with regard to everything. Concurrently to that, we've got some footage from the House of Commons today, as this is still rumbling on. Keir Starmer nowhere to be seen, as he is probably conjuring up his next story and his next version of events on what actually has gone on, as he looks to try and save face. As always, guys, please do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's get over to this video footage. So yes, as you can see, first and foremost, we'll listen to this bit here, but the head of the MI5 says he will never back off from confronting threats from China, as he revealed his officers disrupted a case linked to Beijing just this past week. This shows how serious the allegations that Keir Starmer and this Labour government are accused of.
State threats are escalating. In the last year, we've seen a 35% increase in the number of individuals we're investigating for involvement in state threat activity. That means espionage, including against our parliament, our universities, our critical infrastructure. But now, states are also consistently descending into ugly methods MI5 is more used to seeing in our terrorism casework. My teams are routinely uncovering attempts by state actors to commission surveillance, sabotage, arson, or physical violence right here in the UK. We're dealing with these threats every day. We wish we weren't, but we're rising to the challenge. In 2025, MI5 is contending with more volume and more variety of threat from terrorists and state actors than I've ever seen. Total security is, as we know, impossible in the kind of free society in which we all want to live. But still, we continue to strive for it, night and day. MI5, alongside the police, MI6, GCHQ, the NCA, the military, and many others, is part of one of the most capable and connected national security systems in the world.
So this next video shines a little bit more light on things. Now, as stated, he did take questions, and of course a lot of the questions surrounding the threat has been with regard to this sort of cover-up or alleged cover-up. And this video gives us a little bit of an insight on what went on and what sort of questions and how he answered with regard to the ongoing scandal.
Yes, I'm standing outside the MI5 headquarters where the speech was delivered, and of course it can't be very comfortable for a man who is usually in the shadows to have to step out for this annual event, this annual threat event, at a time when there is such scrutiny on specifically the threat posed by China to the UK, given the collapse last month of this espionage trial and questions about whether or not Sir Keir Starmer's government intervened, as the Conservatives are saying, or interfered in some way to mean that the Crown Prosecution Service had to drop the case. Of course, the two men involved have denied all wrongdoing. So against that backdrop, you had Sir Ken McCallum coming out squarely, choosing his words carefully, but clearly making sure there is no doubt that he would do, as he said, he would not back off from any threat posed to the UK by China. He also, of course, highlighted Russia and Iran. And I think it's really important to underline the severity in which the security service is seeing this escalation of state-based threats against this country, saying that they are using ugly methods more akin to what you would see terrorists using. Russia, for example, is turning to proxies to try to carry out acts. Sorry, is that the police car or ambulance? Sorry. to carry out acts such as espionage, arson, violent physical acts as well. And Iran, he highlighted Iran, saying that in the last year alone, MI5 has tracked around 20 potentially lethal plots in the UK. It's no surprise that his agency is having to deal with that while at the same time having to counter increasing threats from terrorist groups. You only have to look at what happened in Manchester to underline how important and grave a threat that is. In fact, he said that they are dealing with near record numbers of terrorism cases, and underlining the spread of those cases. It's not large groups so much anymore as individuals, including increasingly young individuals who have been radicalised, likely online. He said that 1 in 5 of more than 230 terrorism arrests last year were of children under the age of 17. And that really does give you a sense of the scale of the threat, from at the high end state-based espionage and plots to cause harm on UK soil, all the way across to lone terrorists that can cause, as we've seen, horrendous harm and fear. And that is something that this place is trying to stop every day. And as he says, he can't have a completely safe society, but he says that his people are working tirelessly to do the best they can to keep the UK safe.
And Deborah, we've also heard from him today that he has admitted being frustrated by the collapse of the Westminster spying trial.
Yes, so the speech that he gave was all pre-prepared, and then afterwards he did take some questions off camera from journalists, and he was unsurprisingly asked a lot about the collapse of that trial. And he was pretty open, I thought, in terms of his responses, admitting, of course, it must be the case when it comes to allegations of espionage that MI5 were involved in disrupting, that there is frustration when these cases don't make it to court. He did make the point, though, that MI5's purpose is to detect and disrupt plots, and in the case of the alleged Chinese espionage trial that has collapsed, he said that the allegations of wrongdoing were at least disrupted. And he also said that it's not unprecedented that you have a spying case or some kind of security threat to the UK that is stopped but doesn't, unfortunately, meet the correct threshold to go to trial. And I thought as well, he was also asked about this decision by the government yesterday night to release the evidence that was submitted by the Deputy National Security Advisor to the Crown Prosecution Service as part of this case that was being built against these two British men who've been accused of espionage on behalf of the Chinese state. And Sir Ken McCullum made the point of saying that he knows Matthew Collins, he's worked with him, and he regards him as a man of high integrity and very capable. So clearly weighing in behind a fellow security official at this time of huge scrutiny over how this happened and why.
Well, as that is happening, guys, there's an inquiry, an actual inquiry currently ongoing with regard to this, and just trying to find out just what did actually go on, and if Labour and, of course, the Keir Starmer played a part in this. Now, we've got a few clips from, of course, the House of Commons today, just a few best bits, I suppose, which we're going to go through now. Guys, if you are just tuning in, please do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. So this is Nick Timothy calling out Keir Starmer's lies.
Mr. Speaker, I was slightly baffled by the Minister's answer just now, saying that it's not the government's job, so it's not ministers' jobs to vet witness statements when they're made on behalf of the government. This is exactly the point. They are accountable. The Prime Minister said that the evidence that was relevant to the case was the last government's China policy, but the statements published last night showed that they were changed to reflect this government's China policy. This is not the only way in which the Prime Minister's story has fallen apart. But on this specific point, what the Prime Minister told the House wasn't correct, was it?
It was. There was no political interference from this government under any of those statements that were made. There was not, and it doesn't matter how many times the honourable members allege it, that is the case.
Mr. Speaker.
Number one, This one here, this is the key question from Jeremy Wright, KCMP. Why were weaker and irrelevant political statements included in the DNSA evidence? If they were so desperate for a conviction, why months of delay to reply to the CPS? Minister does not answer.
Mr. Speaker, it's now very clear that the Crown Prosecution Service asked the government more than once, over more than a year, for some additional evidence on what the CPS considered to be the crucial question of whether or not China constituted a national security threat during the relevant period. It seems to me, having read those statements, that there are two important questions at least that arise. The first is the one that's just been asked to him by his honourable friend. Given it was clear by that point, when the Deputy National Security Advisor made his second and third statements, that the question he was being asked to comment on was whether or not that bar of being a national security threat was met or not. What is the possible relevance of the inclusion of information about China as an economic opportunity? Surely the Minister can see, and the government can see, that that only weakens the substance of the question that that particular witness was being asked to answer. And it would be useful to understand whether the DNSA came to that view on his own, or whether it was suggested to him that that would be a useful thing to include. The second question, I think, is this. The government's been very clear, the Minister's been very clear today, the Prime Minister was very clear yesterday, how disappointed the government is at the outcome of this trial, and how much the government wanted this prosecution to proceed. Given the length of time and the number of requests received by the CPS, surely it would be logical to assume the government would be straining every sinew to find extra evidence to meet the CPS's requirement. Whether it thought the CPS was right to ask for it or not, it was clear that with that extra evidence, the CPS would proceed with the case as the government says it wanted. What evidence can the government provide to us that every sinew was strained and that the government did everything it could do to find that evidence? And if that evidence is in fact available and others could find it, won't the government have some explaining to do?
Thank you. Can I thank him for the question and the tone of it? On the first point about on the same question of. Can you just remind me? I'm so sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the first question is about why the Deputy National Security Advisor included in his statement reference to economic opportunity when he knew that wasn't the question he was being asked or the relevant question.
So sorry, and thank you for that. The point I was going to make is on that is that is to provide broader context of the position of the government at the time in relation to its position on China, but it is an independent decision. It is.
Give him Muppet. Absolutely Muppet. Really is. This one here, we've got the Conservatives. Keir Starmer knew the China spy case was going to collapse days before it did. How he chose to do nothing. Why did this government withhold evidence from the trial?
The witness statements are shocking. They tell us that China is conducting, quotes, large-scale espionage operations. I was shocked to learn that the Prime Minister knew that this case was about to collapse several days beforehand, but chose to do nothing. Why didn't the government give the CPS what it was asking for? Yesterday, government sources briefed The Guardian that, and I quote, civil service decided that decisions should be done independently of ministers. The civil service does not get to decide anything. Ministers decide. The Prime Minister was not some helpless captive, unable to make sure that the CPS had what it needed. He knew and he decided not to help. Why? The PM said yesterday that he was utterly constrained by the position of the previous government, and every expert had already contradicted the PM on this. But we can now see that the two witness statements from this year did state the position of the current Labour government, a direct contradiction of what the Prime Minister said yesterday. And the evidence includes lines from Labour's manifesto. They weaken the case. It makes it less clear that China is a threat to our national security. That's one of the things that changed. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this House needs to know what was asked for by the CPS, why it was refused, and we must see all the correspondence and the minutes. If they won't publish the China files, people will ask, what has this government got to hide?
Well, it's pretty damn obvious. I think it's pretty damn obvious. And then finally, guys, obviously a lot of Reform supporters here. This is what Richard Tice's sort of question was.
Richard Tighe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amongst all the noise of this China spy scandal, my constituents in Boston and Skegness, and I think the whole British people, want some clarity from this government. Does the government view China as a national security threat? Yes or no?
The evidence throughout sets out the threats China poses multiple times. There is complete consistency between the two. Obviously, there are very serious threats. I read them out in my statements. Yes.
But again, as I said, they want to keep them on side due to sort of economical benefits. But there's also that situation with regard to the Chagos Islands as well, which does seriously smell a little bit fishy. But I'm looking forward to getting to the end of this thing, you know. I mean, yesterday he misled the House, Keir Starmer. We're going to find out what happens. But of course, an inquiry going into this. But certainly, as you can see with MI5, not happy with what's going on. And China is actually a huge threat to the United Kingdom, and we've got our Prime Minister and Labour government cozying up with them. Let's go into the live chat, ladies and gentlemen. Do let me know your thoughts on everything we have discussed in today's stream. Rachel says, what's the point of talking about this when Starmer won't be booted out as PM? He won't resign, so what's the point? He'll probably get out of it. I mean, yes, there's a point in saying that nothing will happen to him. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Probably nothing will happen to him. But it doesn't make it, doesn't take away how wrong it is. It doesn't take away if what he's alleged of doing is actually true, then how much of a national security threat Keir Starmer actually is. So it doesn't take away the severity of it, despite him maybe not being removed as a Prime Minister, but it doesn't take away the severity whatsoever of these actions if they are found out to be true. But China can build a huge embassy in London with sellers. Exactly. That's the whole next thing. A lot of things just don't make sense with regard to it. I'm dating it back to sort of Chagos Islands as well. You know, you think of the Mauritius, a huge ally to China. What's going on there? There's something that's sort of mirroring them. And the government are also operating us in a way that's China-esque. Digital ID, controlling social media. Is this an approach to try and get closer to China and try and become a new China? I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit weird, doesn't it? It stinks, very much so. And the world is watching, and rightfully so. Well, it's going to continue to erupt, and we're probably not, as I said, as many of you guys have mentioned, we're probably not going to get to the end of this in a little while. Get that traitor jailed. If Tony Blair never faced charges for starting an illegal war, you've got no hope for Starmer being held to account either. Yes, but it's more hypocrisy from Keir Starmer. Again, I know it's no surprise, but of course with the situation with Boris Johnson for misleading the House 3 years ago, he was calling for his resignation due to that. He's misled the House on multiple occasions, and including yesterday. So surely by his own standards and by his own metric, he should, of course, also resign. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it will blow up a little bit more if he's of course found out. At the moment it's alleged, you know, it's not came out that he's been covering them up, although we do have a situation where both of them, where he's fucked up either way, because he's either complicit in some sort of cover-up or he just didn't know about this sort of cover-up. So either way, he's going to look like a tit either way. But if he's found out to have actually covered things up, then of course this could be a huge shitstorm that's on the horizon for him. Karen says, Starmer has always been the biggest threat to us. Why can't we get him out? Well, it's not going to happen. This guy ain't going anywhere anytime soon. James says, think of one good thing Starmer has done to further Britain's interests. I can think of plenty he has done to sabotage them. Exactly, and if you watch the last video with regard to that illegal migrant, Andrew Tate actually speaks of the whole situation with what the governments are actually doing in the West, and why they're allowing this sort of invasion of third worlders. I do encourage you guys to watch the video. It's in the last one towards the end. Andrew Tate sums it up very, very well. But yeah, have a little look at it, and also go over to his X page and have a watch it for yourself. He really does sum up very, very well. My goodness me, Chrissy, thank you so much. We've got a huge super chat donation. Thank you, Chrissy, for your generosity. $50. I can't believe that. That is absolutely mental. Thank you so much, and I'm sure this is not the first. This is like the third time I think Chrissy has donated such a large amount. So thank you very much, Chrissy, for your generosity, and thank you for donating to the channel. Shirley says, I'm sick of him getting away with everything. Trump will be pushing Starmer to get this sorted. Either way, it's very interesting to see them, of course, cozying up with China in such way. But of course, the MI5 did, of course, say that the threat from Iran and, of course, Russia as well, but also stating that terrorist attacks are going up, or at least plots to do so are going up, whether that come through arson or lone attacks and whatnot. It's something that's a huge threat to the UK, and obviously the MI5 is there to sort of stop them and foil these sorts of plots. But yeah, he stated that the threat is bigger than ever, and especially from sort of Chinese espionage as well, which also makes things more so interesting. The royal family should be ashamed. Kathy says, we are sick of all politicians in all countries getting away with this crap. Costs many of our lives. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But as I said, an inquiry, or shall I quote this correctly, the senior MPs to hold a formal inquiry into the China spy case as top Tory slams a lack of democracy and calls for a dissolution of Parliament. A formal inquiry into the collapse of China's espionage case will be held by a parliamentary committee. Chairman of the Joint Committee of the National Security Strategy, Matt Weston, said there are a lot of questions yet to be asked and announced they would hold a formal inquiry into the issue. Addressing cabinet officers, Minister Chris Ward said, "We will be holding this inquiry as soon as we possibly can, and we will give a commitment that we will have access to ministers and civil servants or whoever we wish to come before us." Mr. Ward insisted that the government wanted to be as transparent as possible. So we are going to be seeing an inquiry into this. We may get a few more answers a little bit later on with regard to it. Great point, YA. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this one. Do let me know your thoughts on the breaking news with regard to MI5's urgent warning with regard to China targeting Britain. And do let me know your thoughts on Starmer's involvement in this alleged cover-up of the espionage scandal.